Hi, I'm Alison, and this is the CustomerX Files. Professionally speaking, my background is rooted in marketing, but last year I ditched the CMO career path and followed my true passion, putting the customer at the forefront of business strategy. You could say I'm all in on the overall customer experience. As I always say, we are people before we're professionals, so personally speaking, you'll often find me spending time with my teenage daughters, traveling, cooking, exploring thrift shops, or hiking on secluded trails. Tom Petty fills up much of my playlist, British programming is often on TV, and as an English major, oddly, my reading list is surprisingly short. But there's only so many hours in the day, the cats knock my book away, or the dogs are begging for me to take them for a walk. More importantly, thank you. Thank you for joining me each and every episode with my incredible guests. We're so happy to have you here and so happy to have you join the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I am joined by Maria Sturgeon, a woman who, in my opinion, really needs no introduction, as she's had such an incredibly successful career as an executive influencer, a collaborative partner, and also she's an award-winning customer advocacy visionary. Maria's taken over 15 years of experience in global customer advocacy, marketing communications, and sales acceleration to drive innovation, strategic planning, and of course, our favorite topic, customer engagement. But what I really love is that Maria does all of this and she makes it look so easy, but she's also really passionate about developing and strengthening sales enablement programs, which is why she's here today to talk about relationships and partnerships and building really strong advocacy programs. Personally, I've gotten to know Maria over the last couple of years, and I'm very grateful for her friendship. She is a woman with a kind heart and a fierce spirit, and she loves her family, her faith, and she loves the Kentucky Derby, which we're going to talk about in a second. But welcome, Maria. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Alison. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it.
Of course. I'm so glad that we're finally getting to do this. And we're going to dive into the professional topic, but I do have to pause and start with a bit of personal. You know that I love doing that. And the Kentucky Derby. So we're a couple of weeks from there upon recording this episode. So I have to ask, why such an affinity for the Derby? Maybe share some of the traditions or how you became enthralled with this particular iconic event.
Sure. So it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, and I reside here today. But I grew up about 10 minutes away from Churchill Downs, which is the venue where the Kentucky Derby is held. It's long been a tradition in my family. I remember some of my brothers going like when I was younger. I remember my neighbors collecting jackpots. And I started going when I was about a freshman in high school. So I've done everything from the infield to the paddock area to like super nice seats. And it's just, if you haven't done the Kentucky Derby, you need to put on your bucket list. It's just such a great day for Kentucky to really, just showcase our kindness, our warmth, the traditions and everything. And I love it every year. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not sure if I'm actually going Derby Day, which is a huge day this year. It's the 105th Kentucky Derby. So we're expecting just a huge crowd. I'm actually going to what we call Thurby. And it's on that Thursday, it's the Louisville Derby. And then Friday's Oaks, may go to that. And then, of course, Saturday is Derby. But there's nothing better that I would, love to talk to people about is the Kentucky Derby.
I think that's so cool. And I haven't gone, but it's funny because my birthday is on May 4th. And prior to meeting my husband, where I was told this whole May the 4th be with you, he's a Star Wars fanatic. I didn't even know about that. But it was Derby weekend often. And we have a track in Minnesota. And we would often go. I would go with friends. And the season doesn't start, but they have the Derby. And they have it, broadcast. And they try to bring some of those traditions and excitement. And it's so fun. So I can only imagine what it's like in person. And I have to ask, how many hats do you have? Do you do the hat thing?
Oh, absolutely. Hats and fascinators. So I have a lot. I have what we call a hat closet downstairs. It's a cedar closet. And I actually try to sell my hats and fascinators after I wear them a few times. So probably I would say maybe 15 right now. I
Okay.
do have to back up because you said your birthday's on May 4th, and this is something you probably didn't know about me. Kind of brings a tear to my eye. My dad actually died on Derby Day, and it was May 4th, 2013. So, gosh, that's just, I love that your birthday's that day, and it sounds like it would be like a bad day for me, but it's not because my dad died on Derby Day, which was one of the greatest, days in our family. So we celebrate him all through the year, but on May 4th and also on Derby Day, whether it falls on May 4th or not. So I'm honored that you share that day with my dad.
That, I'm glad that you said, you would think it's a sad day, but there's something very symbolic about that occurring on that day. And I don't know, I'm a believer that things happen for a reason. So yes, I'm proud to share that with,
Yeah. He had his own run for the roses that day.
yes, definitely, definitely he did. And the roses, the flowers, and that's a whole other topic that we could get into. I think that's what I would love the most to see in person is just the flowers, because it's not just for the winners, right? I mean,
It's
it's
absolutely
everywhere.
it's all day racing event. I want to say there are 14 races throughout the day, but actually the Kentucky Derby, the actual race itself, you could actually watch them. They show that on the news. Kroger's actually makes the rose bridle that the horse wears, the winner. I mean, it's just so much tradition. Like I could spend hours just talking about this, but I'm telling you, it's like you can spend the 2 weeks leading up to Derby. They have a different event every day. Actually, the Saturday kicks it off. It's one of the largest fireworks displays in the United States. It's called Thunder over Louisville. So from this Saturday on, every day is there's something that Louisvillians can do, or anyone we welcome from out of town. So you always have a place to stay when you come to Louisville for the Derby.
I love it. And I love that you also mentioned the tradition and the warmth and just being able to, Louisville to showcase their welcoming, attitude and having people come and enjoy this and share this with them. So it's not very surprising that you are in the professional role that you're in and that you are a guide for relationships. And I think it's a nice segue into talking about this professional realm, because I know listeners are going to be eager to hear this episode because there are so many changes that have happened in customer advocacy over the last few years, so many new programs that are being built, so many changes in leadership and people and transformations of what does a program actually look like. So Maria, I know that you and I share a philosophy that relationships, they're still at the heart of customer marketing and advocacy programs. Why do you think that this is? Why are relationships always going to be in that position, regardless of how this industry continues to evolve?
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, relationships are really at the heart of really everything we do. It's the interconnectivity that makes an organization thrive or fail, both from, I think, from an internal relationship perspective and definitely an external one. I feel like that customer marketers are in a unique position. I consider them like the wingman, or I should say I consider us like the wingman of the organization. We can help, or we can make those connections kind of happen and build the trust that's needed over time. Perfect example is I'm working to establish some customer relationships right now and start up the customer roundtables. And that's something that's kind of more of a foreign concept here with the reference program running it. So I'm trying to build that trust right now between myself, the account rep, and the users. So whether it be like internal folks like sales and customer success, or external with customers, we really, like we customer marketers, can help those key stakeholders and customers be successful and feel connected. Even like IT, if you look at the IT organization, like I'm working a lot with them now to set up the infrastructure for success. If you don't have that solid foundation, your team won't be successful, and it will free you up to concentrate really on more strategic goals. So it all goes back to the sense of connection and trust. If there's no sense of connection and trust, you're going to lose the stakeholders, you're going to lose the customers.
And when you talk about success and building those relationships, thinking very tactically, because I know you've spent the last few months building very strong internal relationships. What are some of the best practices or kind of the tips and tricks that, I know people are always interested in, like, how do I grab them and how do I pull them in and get off on the right foot from the beginning so that I don't lose traction?
Yeah, I think I've been really lucky here at Stripe. My manager's given me the time to really meet with our key stakeholders. Number one is identify a list of all your key stakeholders across the board, whether it be the sales, marketing, the analytics team, product, CSMs, again, IT, events team. Identify all of those people and pick out a few people from each one of those groups and really schedule calls with them. I scheduled so many calls with folks, really trying to listen to them and learn about the organization and structure so I could develop our program accordingly. But don't be afraid to offer like best practices and experiences and how to partner and grow. But don't also think that what you did at your last companies can be repeated. You just can't replicate what you did the last time. And you really need to adapt to the organization, adapt to the culture, and adapt to their strategic objectives. So again, I think that's like number one. And then number two, I think document progress and share. Make sure, again, you're going back to aligning to the company's strategy and objectives and link back to growth. If you can't do this, your company really doesn't need you. And most importantly, you need to do this at like instilling all points of the customer journey. I would say, like, lastly, just be personable. It really helps to establish trust and strengthens relationship. You're not personable, it just doesn't help. I mean, I look back to like a recent trip I took to Dayton. I went to a basketball game and I saw so many colleagues there from several of my past companies. I even saw a few customers, and it was just so nice to be able to connect with them. And I know those relationships lasted because like I was personable. I took the time to develop, them because I really cared about those people. I cared about the organization and their success. So they saw that vested interest that I was, spending with them and caring about their success.
And I know, back to what you said, Maria, about, building those relationships and having conversations. I couldn't agree more, especially when you're coming in to a new, even if it's the same organization, but a new role, or if it's a new organization, who are those stakeholders and having conversations? And will you share, I mean, I know this number, but how many hours you spent doing that to ensure that that was successful in your role when you started?
Yeah, I spent almost really the first 3 months. I mean, part of it was the first month and a half, just getting on board, spending with the stakeholders. And then I went, my first really true assignment was digging into the data, making sure that our customer profiles were accurate, and defining the framework so that we were collecting the right information and we had the right information to react quickly. So that took another 2.5 months where I was spending 10 to 12 hours a day with people around the globe. And people, sometimes they wanted to do it, can we do this via Slack and everything? And I'm like, no, we have to meet because we have to have that conversation. It gave me the ability to actually meet them. So starting that relationship with them, telling them why it's important, because I want them to succeed. So this is important that we get the data correct, because when they have a request, it will help identify those customers easily and then quickly turn over the reference to their own prospects and customers. So I think that's key, is just spending that time. I go back to thinking about this. I know we've all heard this, we're losing the art of conversation in the virtual world. I'm virtual. I've been virtual since 2012, and we tend to rely on, Slack or instant messenger or even just email. And we really just need to reach out to people, plan those meetings, plan those catch-ups, just to have that more personable, I think, touch. It's really a part of everything we do. And I think about a family eating dinner together. They're all on their cell phones, texting or browsing, sitting together, but they're not really connecting. So I want to make sure, I am connecting with those people and establishing those relationships.
I think that's a great point. And I love that you bring up the fact that you do have to push back sometimes and say, nope, we need to have this conversation. and it's 15 minutes of your time or what have you. And people generally will be receptive. And it's always amazing to me what that 15 minutes of a true conversation, what that does for paving that relationship path. I think that's huge.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Because you tend to rely on those people in the future for like more feedback and say, hey, do you remember when we met? Just showing them how we can constantly help them succeed and move them forward.
And you also bring up the data. And so I wanted to ask you about, situations where I spend a lot of time talking to some of our customers, and there is a program, there's an established program, but maybe it has stalled or somebody has left the organization and someone's moving in to take over that program. Do you have any feedback on how to break down some of the barriers that come with that? Because it's a different situation, right, than coming in fresh and building from scratch.
Yeah, I think so. I think it goes back to really aligning with the strategic goals of the organization. Make sure that, you're in alignment with those organization goals, and higher up your company's overall strategic goals, the LT's goals. So you find that and you constantly like align your program to those goals to show how it's moving ahead. Because if you don't do that, again, like I said, your company won't see this function really as needed, and you'll kind of like sidetrack. So I think that's really important, is just overall goal alignment, establish regular cadence with your stakeholders to show that progress and touch points throughout the year, whether it be like an executive scorecard or a dashboard. And then also just regular touch points, get on those sales meetings, get on those other stakeholder meetings, and just give them, quick updates. You don't have to ask for a lot of time because they don't have a lot of time. So just say, hey, can I have 5 or 10 minutes of your time and show you what's new, show you where, we can help you succeed, and then just go from there.
Yep. And the fact that you mentioned, 5, 10, 15 minutes, it's amazing. I think there's the psychological aspect to it that if somebody asks for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, that immediately feels like a huge lift. And of course, executives don't have that time, but most people will give you 5 or they'll give you 10.
Yeah, absolutely. I just actually kicked off something here too with new hires. I did this at my last few companies. I think it's worked well because new hires, when they come into an organization, they're inundated with just, how do I get on board? They go through 2 weeks of like orientation, and they receive so much information. So even though our customer reference program is touched on then, I actually send them an email, invite them to a quick chat to really cover, like, this is how you submit a request. This is how you nominate for a new customer, and make sure I leave plenty of time for questions. It's not mandatory that they attend, but I offer it like every month. I offer 2 sessions just to make sure we can touch all the global, everyone globally. And I think that's really worked well. It's just to spend that time with those small groups, just to tell them, about the program.
Yep. And back to the data, because I know that you spent a lot of time cleaning up data and making sure that things were accurate. And we'll get back to relationships in a second, but how did that effort, and it was a huge lift, but how has that set you up for success? And how did you go about that and leveraging that strong data now as you move forward?
Yeah. So I jokingly call it the No More Dirty Data Project. I think the data sets us up for major success. Again, one of the fundamental challenges we saw is that we weren't able to turn over references quickly. So regardless of what company you're in, my past 2 companies too, there's always that challenge of being able to keep those reference profiles updated, that data accurate, and make sure you're gathering the right data on the topic. So when a sales request is submitted, we can turn over references quickly. If we wait too long, then we're going to lose against the competition. So we need to turn over those references quickly. We need to have the right references. And also for like the user, we don't want to go out to the user with an irrelevant request. So it sets us up for like major, major success, because that builds confidence in our organization that we do have that right data and we can help them succeed. So I've already seen that. I've seen the net volume of requests come in that has increased year over year, the number of completions with our reference customers, and just the overall feedback from sales. They stood up. There were individuals that I didn't even have to ask that contributed when we relaunched the program in April that said, yeah, I used the program. This is the value of the program. And that really meant the world to me because I did spend a lot of time with the data because it was important. It was the fundamental, I think, reason why I was hired, number one. And then that led to a wider role and be able to build the program. So it goes back to the data. If you have incorrect data, regardless of what function you serve in the company, you're not going to succeed and you're not going to help the company succeed.
And would you say that the data went hand in hand with building the strong relationships? Kind of a chicken or the egg situation here, but how do you view that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was really kind of the reason why I was outreaching to individuals as well. It gave me that ability to start forming those relationships and not only just saying, this is not a one and done project, but this is something we have to keep moving forward and making sure that these profiles are updated. So just kind of building that confidence, it's important to me. I hope it's important to you. And this is why, we'll help you increase your win rates, help our company grow, et cetera. So I think they go hand in hand together. So we can, again, it's not one and done. It's something I want to keep an eye on to make sure we are keeping this data accurate and build those touch points in throughout the year. So all account reps are updating their data 2 or 3 times a year versus just those annual updates. Because we have way too many references to really go back and redo all of those calls over again. So now we have enabled the functionality where they can actually have it self-service within the database. And those conversations kind of all led to that as well. So it's helped us build our infrastructure. So I think that's great. And just also an important part of this, as I mentioned, was the foundation for this, working with IT. So identifying an IT partner who would understand the goals of the program and how it's contributing to growth and wanting to be a part of that. So they helped, instill this ability for the account reps to be able to manage it going forward. That's huge because now I don't have to get on the phone with them and now they can do it themselves rather if they want to update that. So that's going to be huge going forward.
And how have you been able to take all of that and then leverage, because user adoption, I hear that time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and what you have done, which is so smart, is you've built the foundation in both a qualitative and quantitative form. And have you been able to leverage those two efforts to increase program adoption now that you're moving into, subsequent phases?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we're seeing the request come in heavy volume year over year, which is great. I'm monitoring our dashboards closely to see what revenue have we influenced. Is it increasingly going up? The sales reps are including me on a lot of their different Slack channels that they have for their relative sales motions, which feels great that they're including me because I always say position yourself as an extension of the sales motion. So they see me as an important part of this. So, absolutely.
And when we talk about, and you just touched on that, the dashboards, right? And the reporting, because you're nothing without the data, but you're also nothing without being able to take the data and make sense of it, right?
Yeah.
And how are some of the ways that you've been able to measure relationships? And that's always such a tricky question. I don't know, how do you measure something that's so qualitative? But I think that you have gotten there. How would you respond to that?
Oh, yeah, I would say I'm probably not here or there quite yet, since I haven't been at my current position. But I would say just overall in my career, looking at the longevity of relationships and measuring a customer's participation along their customer journey. I mean, that takes some time to do, but what I like to do is look at the top customers for the organization and see how you've supported reference activities for them throughout their customer journey. So actually when they were our prospect and when they came through the EBCs, when they asked you for a reference call and your team supported it. And then when they actually became a reference customer themselves and a member, if you have a formal program, a member of your program, or just doing other references. I mean, I look at like that is a huge success. And then sometimes that person leaves that company, they rejoin another company, and then they decide to bring on your organization as well, or they're still advocating for your organization through social media or through speaking engagements. I mean, it does take some time, but there's always those 5 to 10 customers that you can pick out and really show that journey. And I think a lot of people don't do that because we're so involved in like tactical. We don't look at that, customer journey as a whole and really, those touch points.
And I mean, I'm super passionate about customer journey and the overall customer experience. So I just kind of a bonus question here, because I think a lot of people are starting to think about it, at least, and the difference between, I know this is good and I should be looking at this, but how do I actually do it? So taking that strategy to tactical, how are some ways that you're capturing it? You know what I mean? So that if someone said, can you show it to me?
Yeah, I mean, it's traditionally always been through just like presentations, like literally building out a slide on each customer saying they started here. This is what they were talking about when they came into the EBC. Then they requested, they worked with our, customer reference team. They wanted to speak to customers. This is when we closed the deal. This is when they became a member. So it's almost like a timeline of their journey. So it's mostly around that. I mean, hopefully you have like everyone, no, not everyone, because if folks aren't using like a reference management system to track this, it's difficult. Also, a lot of times like the EBC function sets outside of the reference team. So closely partner with your EBC team to be able to capture this and get the fundamental perspective of the customer, as a whole, and then what they do. So a lot of times, for example, we take our most popular customers and then we put them on roundtables or big speaking engagements because we know folks want to speak to them. It's often because they have a strong brand or they're using like multi-product solutions and they're having big like business outcomes with those. And those are the customers you want to really capture that information on because those are the customers that I think your LT really cares about, like those big customers. So you need to make sure they're in your reference program. They're doing things for you, but don't at the same time be cautious. Like you don't want to overuse them. You don't want to burn them out. It's also important, I think, to get different personas within the organization of folks who can reference from those companies. And that might be something you can capture as well. So it does take some time. It's not like something that's like sometimes easy to do. But if you have those touch points, like I mentioned with the EBC organization, with the analyst team, making sure, if they complete any analyst interviews, because that's huge too. Like, are those customers spending times with like key firms like Gartner, Forrester, IDC? Are they speaking to them? And is it helping you achieve your market leadership position? Like, that's huge. So you need to be including those things too. It's not just sales calls. It's a lot of marketing events as well, both from like the brand perception and then driving that sales growth.
I love so much of what you just said as far as how do you, right? I think we get overwhelmed sometimes, especially lately over the last, 18 months or so, and we feel we have to boil the ocean, in roles as CMA professionals, and you don't always have to do that. And you can still be very successful in what you were saying as far as customer journey, right? That's a very big thing. And very rarely is there someone in the organization dedicated to CX or dedicated to journey mapping. But there are ways that you can do that. And you listed out, I took some notes, a whole bunch of different ones. Decide what's important to the business and pick that handful. I love showing the story of different personas in an org. And I've done that exercise, and it's very enlightening when you look at how different the experience is for different people within the organization. And while it's important to keep in mind, the experience can be different, but the experience should never be lacking regardless of what position. If you're, if you're an engineer who is working with the solution at the practitioner level versus somebody who's sitting at, the executive leadership, obviously what you offer and how that experience looks is different, but we can't leave behind, people that are part of that journey.
No, absolutely. I think, 2 points there. One is we've all seen in the customer marketing industry, I think over the last few years, just the amount of jobs that have been lost. Fortunately, we're seeing a lot of new jobs, but with job loss comes obviously resources cut. Their bandwidth is short. So, really focus in on those strategic objectives and hone in on those strategic objectives. You can't do everything. So I would say, have that agreement with your manager on what are the most important things that we need to do to move this program and our company forward. And number two, back to what you said about, it doesn't matter if you're engineering or what area you're in, you don't want to lack experience. And as I mentioned, we're getting ready to launch these roundtables, and perfect example is, the account rep came back to me this morning and said, yeah, the customer is responding well to the idea. I think it's great. And we're looking at, we were considering a more, I would say, technical roundtable. And now it's becoming more of the CTO level. And I'm like, well, you know what? We don't have to stop at one. We can do both. I think we'll have the interest where the folks who are more on the user side technical, we can do one there. And I think we can also do one from a very high level perspective, business outcomes, more of the business folks. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing what we can kind of scope out, because I don't want anyone to be left out if we're going to do this. So yeah, I think I totally agree with you.
I love that. And I'm actually very excited to hear about the roundtables and how those go, because at least in my experience, I have found that there's so much gold that comes out of those discussions that fuels all the different stakeholders. And then that goes back to kind of where we started the conversation, right? With those relationships, you have to feed them. And when you can deliver something to, whether it's your product team or it's your IT team, like you said, you've called out some of those beyond just sales and marketing. They, of course, often get the good stuff that comes out of these. But if you can give a little something to everyone, right? Relationships take work. And I think I'm so excited to hear all the good stuff you get out of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Maria, before we wrap up, you could probably so much good stuff that you could offer, but I always like to ask everybody one piece of advice for the CMA community based on your numerous years of experience. What would it be?
Yeah, it goes back, and I know I've said this on the, just previously, but align yourself strategically. Identify, you're just not there to reply to tactical requests coming in. You're there to understand why those requests are coming in and how to move your company forward. So you need to develop your program around that, your metrics around that, everything. Align with the stakeholders that are also very strategic, and realize how you can build your program around those core strategic pillars, objectives, and really show that value. Making sure you're tracking that, you have a mechanism in place to track it, and you're reporting it out, regular updates.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for joining me and for sharing all of your wisdom with the community. It is much appreciated. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Alison. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to bookmark it wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow me, Alison Bukowski, on LinkedIn. And a special thank you to Point of Reference for supporting this podcast. For over 20 years, Point of Reference has been the Salesforce native solution to solve a myriad of customer advocacy and reference management challenges. It's our goal to elevate the professionals within this space to achieve business goals and drive their programs forward as vital to business success. Contact me to learn more.